From the Hall of Bloggers, Michael Hinman joins us today to discuss the dubious deeds of Axanar. Hang on to your crowdfunding, people. You're about to join Super Geeks.
All right. Beat you this time, Ross.
That's because you're on cue this time.
All right. All right. Thank you for joining us, everybody. My name is George. Chooch998 is my Twitter. And joining us today, as always, is my friend Anthony. Where can people find you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Anthony Battles.
Very good, very good. What about you, Will?
On Twitter at Intrinsicus. That's intrinsic with a US on the end.
And Ross.
Twitter, Subsailor688.
And John?
Yep, you can find me at vanishingpoint.biz.
Joining us, as she does oh so rarely, but still welcome, Sun CL. Where can people find you, Sun?
You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/SunCLFan.
All right, and we have a special guest today, which I'm very excited to have on the show, Michael Hinman. Michael, where can people find you on social media?
Oh, no, I'm never on social media. No, they can probably find me on Twitter at 1701 News or at Michael B. Hinman or at Airlock Alpha. But, you know, wherever you can find me, I guess.
Now, do you this is like the 911, 911 thing. Do you consider it 1701 or 1701?
Well, you know, I say 1701 just because it's easier to say it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess either way works. It just depends on, you know, what you're in the mood for.
Based on the context, to me personally, it sounds more logical to say 1701. But, you know, it's all good. It's all good.
Just
Okay,
faster.
question?
Faster.
Sure.
1701 or 1701?
Ah.
This is why we're changing the name, by the way.
Does it have an A, B, C, or bloody D?
Those are the future spin-offs coming out in case they get shut down. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, thank you for joining us, Michael. So definitely. So, Michael, your name has become synonymous with Axanar, Star Trek Axanar, the whole, controversy that's been out there because of the articles you've written in 1701 News that have challenged Alec Peters, the producer of Axanar, the aforementioned controversial subject matter. Can you give our listeners a very brief overview of, well, not only your background, but your history with Alec and how it leading up to what we're going to be talking about?
Well, I guess there's like a lot larger history than even I'm aware of, because at least according to Alec Peters, I have some huge grudge against him or something, where I'm just acting out revenge, which I'm not quite sure what that is. But at 1701 News, I mean, most of my background, I'm a print journalist. I spent 23 years in newspapers. I'm kind of on a sabbatical right now because I'm helping my better half through medical school in another country where I can't work. So I've been focused a little bit more on the entertainment side. But I mean, I started Sci-Fi Portal like a long time ago, syfyportal.com, and
Interesting.
2009 I sold that name to NBC Universal, which became Sci-Fi. So I'm the source of that terrible name. And so a few years ago we worked with Rod Roddenberry to create 1701 News, and once they became executive producers of the new show, we kind of just bought them out more or less, and so I took over full ownership of the site, which just covers Star Trek news and stuff. So apparently along the way, we would cover different fan films. We had writers who did that because I don't really watch them. And Axanar came about at the end of last year, got sued. Of course, for us, we thought, well, that's interesting enough, and we figured it'd be just a few stories about it here and there, and they would settle really quickly, and this would be all gone and done, before we even realized it was happening. But here we are, June 1st, 51 stories later. We're still covering this thing, and it still seems to be going on and on. But yeah, it's just that Axanar just did something totally different from other fan films, and primarily it's that they really commercialized what they were doing. And that's just a big no-no when it comes to fan films.
When they first started, also, was I could, because I haven't gone far back enough to, forgive me, I haven't dug deep in the past when it all went down up to a certain point. But was 1701 News supportive up until a point? Or I do remember, this is what I recollect. You guys got notice when Alec Peters started becoming called out when this lawsuit began, and you guys wanted to actually talk to him in an impartial interview. And I remember that your boss was defending you because Alec created all these guidelines for this is the way the interview is going to go down, and you didn't violate any of those guidelines, but Alec himself did. And can you fill in the gaps from there?
Yeah, I think you might be confusing us just a little bit with some of the other interviews that he did, but we covered this. When the lawsuit dropped, we actually put that out, and then I think 2 days later, right after the New Year, I put out a column because everybody was kind of looking at this this poor fan film, blah blah blah.
Right.
And I was one of the early people to come out. It's no, maybe we should look at this again because you're making me defend corporations, which I don't like to defend corporations, but now you're forcing me to do it because, the corporation's right in this point. So we actually I wrote a column that got a ton of traction that actually was one of the early things that went out against Axanar. And we had actually done positive coverage of Axanar leading up to that. We have a reporter, John Kirk, who did quite a bit of coverage. But in late January, John, who had already established a relationship with Axanar because he covered fan films for us, he approached Alec about doing an interview, and Alec knew it was my site. And, and by the way, I'm the boss of the site, so there's nobody above me.
Oh, okay. I see what you
Roddenberry
mean now,
there.
where I get them mixed up. I see what you're saying. Okay.
And so John, so I said, well, John should do the interview because really I thought this was only going to go a couple more stories, and I had already expressed an opinion, so I felt that it was probably inappropriate for me to do the interview. So we actually set preconditions on the interview. We made it clear that nothing was off the record, that we would record it on our side, and he was free to do it on his side if he wanted. That, so that if he ever claimed that he didn't say things, we could say, no, you did, and here's the proof. And, and so we set conditions like that, which he followed. I mean, he followed that and we followed that. The problem that came out afterward is that he claimed that I re-edited the story and took out different things that he had said. So we actually released the quotes, all the quotes that were included in the first draft of the story that John Kirk submitted, which I think we only cut out a couple, and said, no, what we got, this is what John gave us. This is what we have. So, that's kind of where that all kind of blew up.
So when you guys finished it, did you give him a preview before you were going to say this is what's going to be released, or did you just release it?
No. I mean, because we're not, because that's the thing is we're not a public relations company, so there wouldn't be any prior approval on a story. You say,
I know, as a courtesy, some people do that.
No, we wouldn't. Because he had the option to record it just like we did, and and we definitely said we were recording. And okay. I mean, so he could have done it any time, and he has never approached us directly, or even indirectly, really, to say what he said was misquoted or taken out of context, because we would have definitely addressed each and every issue that he had and made corrections where necessary, or stated where necessary. But because he claimed that he said some nice things about the fan films, and I'm like, well, what was this amazing thing that you said that would counter all the negative stuff that you said? What would Citrus say? Oh, okay. So he does like fan films, when you said all this negative stuff about them. So that was kind of the big back and forth.
So that's how it all got started. And then, of course, we all know what happened from there, as far as, because we've discussed this on Super Geeks. Sunsail, since you're very passionate about this subject, is there anything specifically you would like to ask Michael?
Well, there's yes and maybe.
Just give it to me, Sunsail. Just give it to me.
The interesting thing is, I see
be careful what you wish for.
I see a lot of people covering the case from the Trek fandom and not really realizing that this has tentacles. This case literally has tentacles that go out and stretch out, not just from Trek IP or film IP, but it goes into gaming IP, music, all this other stuff. And it goes so far as to even this very show. Because if Axanar wins its case, it could be to the detriment of fair use, to the point that somebody could literally steal the entire show of Super Geeks, put it up on their own website, and start selling their own crap based on Super Geeks, a show that we here create, and they could get away with it because fair use. And on the other side, if CBS and Paramount should win this case, if it goes to trial, this could even further stranglehold the fair use laws that are already in place, cutting off people who are critics or news outlets covering this kind of information.
I've already seen a couple articles about that where Sony is actually trying to charge people for fair use.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be too worried about that, though. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I've covered, I was a business journalist for a long time, so I got to cover a lot of intellectual property. Plus, I sold my own intellectual property. And so, I kind of had to get, really well versed in this. Sorry. The biggest thing...
No problem.
Didn't mean to cough. But, the biggest thing you have to... I think that this would only really impact everybody else right now is if this actually went to a court decision, then it got appealed and was held up in some way, or was overturned or some way in appeal that affected things negatively. The one nice thing about copyright is that there's not a lot of case law that can affect it, because when you go into this, what CBS and Paramount are asking for is what they call a substantial similarity analysis. And
yes.
The thing about that is that it's very specific to this case. You cannot really apply it to other cases. Now, certain aspects, certain elements you might be able to, but only if it goes into appeal and gets to case law. I can tell you that even before J.J. Abrams said whatever that BS that he said a couple of weeks ago, that this case... Yeah, but this case was going to be settled anyway because Discovery is coming up, and even though Axanar has pro bono representation, that's only representation. That's not all the incidentals, including the cost of Discovery.
That's
and usually these cases get settled once people who don't have a lot of money, like Axanar, get the estimate for how much Discovery is going to cost. Then all of a sudden they're settling, and that's usually how this works. So I've always expected that if it got this far, if they got past all the technical motions, that we were going to see a settlement. And really what this countersuit did is just kind of extend that window a little bit now.
Michael, let me ask you a question, because I brought this up a couple of weeks ago. I've had an experience myself and through friends where copyright in court, and I'm not sure how versed you are in this, but it sounds like you might be, so I'm going to ask you your opinion. So what I was always told was what brings up the copyright is what they call points of similarity. So, for example, White Wolf, the company that makes the Vampire the Masquerade game, was under a lawsuit by Sony for Underworld, or they tried to sue Underworld for copying them, or vice versa. And what ended up happening in court was it had to do with points of similarity. Like, for example, in Star Trek's case, if it has the Delta badge, or if they use the word Enterprise, so you can have a sci-fi show, for example, that has a Federation. That's not a copyright thing because there's points of similarity. But then if you add, say, for example, bumpy-headed Klingons, or you use certain things, the court takes a sort of a checklist of check. Okay, those are points of similarity. So therefore, it's too similar to that show, whether it's vampires or aliens, to say you have violated a copyright thing. Do you know if that applies to how Axanar is being handled as far as their lawsuit?
Yeah, well, that's exactly what's happening here. What you're describing is actually the substantial similarity analysis, and because when the Hollywood Reporter and then a lot of these mainstream news outlets, when they focus so much on the Klingon language and all of this other BS that they were focusing on, where they felt like, oh well, you can't copyright this, you can't copyright that, you can't copyright pointed ears and stuff like that. But that's not what Paramount and CBS was doing. Because basically, I could make a TV show that has to do with people in space on a ship exploring in the stars. That's perfectly fine. And, that you can do that. But where it starts becoming a problem is if that ship has two nacelles and a saucer section, that is called the USS Enterprise or is
Right.
part of Starfleet, I could have a logical alien race. You can't copyright a logical alien race, but you can copyright a logical alien race that has pointed ears, raised eyebrows, and call themselves Vulcans.
Right.
When you
Okay.
put all of those pieces together, it's just like a song. You can't copyright every individual note of a song, because each note is not copyrightable.
Right,
However, it's
right.
the expression of those notes together. So pointed ears may not be copyrightable. Raised eyebrows might not be copyrightable. The word Vulcan might not be copyrightable. But you
Logic.
put those logic. But you put those things together, and suddenly you have a copyrighted expression.
Yeah.
You have like the notes brought together to create a song.
Yeah,
The Klingon
points of
language doesn't
similarity.
have to be copyrighted, but that Klingon language is part of what identifies a Klingon. So, and that's where you put it with a bumpy head warrior race called a Klingon, then you kind of cross the line into substantial similarity.
And then when you start adding things like warp drive and transporter and starship, everything that people know as Star Trek.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the points of similarity, they have to kind of add up because there's a generic thing like Doctor Who, for example. They've even before Star Trek, they've had, but they call them teleports. So it's a little bit different, but yeah, it gets into that blurry area.
Yeah, except
but there comes a point.
as long as you don't identify it as, because the biggest thing about a substantial similarity is, can I watch this without thinking Star Trek?
Yeah, okay.
So, if I see somebody get transported in Doctor Who, if I see somebody get, when I see in Battlestar Galactica when they do whatever, or even Lightspeed in Star Wars, which seems to be a lot similar to Warp Drive now since the J.J. Abrams universe came out.
True.
But as long as when I see those things, do I think Star Trek? Do I think Star Wars? So you can have these individual elements. It's just when you bring it together, does that become really close to where people are thinking this is Star Trek or something else?
Good point. Anybody have any
Right.
other questions for John? I mean, sorry, for Michael. I'm sorry, John. I mean, you know what I mean. I get you guys mixed up.
Whoever it is, whoever's on.
Whoever it is. Magnum, anybody?
Man, you guys are full of questions
So,
tonight.
okay, I guess the other question is, can you kind of explain what makes Axanar so much different from other fan productions?
Yeah, I think
Because I think there was a lot of confusion over, was it because of the money or the crowdfunding or...
Well, I mean, a lot of fan films use crowdfunding. Star Trek New Voyages uses it. Star Trek Continues uses it. And I'm sure there's a few others. I'm not that well versed in fan films,
Renegades.
unfortunately. Yeah, Renegades use them. And these are things that I've learned since I had to start covering this case. But the things, it's not even the amount of money. Like $1.3 million is a lot of money. And it's definitely more than any other fan film has done. And that's not even the biggest issue. I think where the problems really came in is the fact that they opened a studio that they were going to rent out as a commercial venture, and they raised the seed money for it. It's
for other productions.
Yeah, it's like I'm going to be starting a business, and and I'm going to be seeking out some funding to get it going, either with angel investors or maybe just with a straight up business loan and just do it, that way, and that's fine. But if I do that by raising money, like, oh, I'm going to do a Star Trek newsletter from this, and so, but with the money that I raise from this Star Trek newsletter, from this crowdfunding, I'm going to start a newspaper. Just a regular commercial newspaper, and I'm using the money that I'm raising off of the Star Trek IP in order to fund this commercial venture. That's where you're kind of crossing a line.
Yeah,
because so let me ask a
Go ahead.
question real quick. With regards to crossing a line, in your opinion, Michael, where did Axanar cross the line?
I think that, in my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, so I always have to say that. I'm not even one by training. Which is just a joke on
Lol.
Peters, because that's what he always says.
That's the line Alec Peters uses to defend him saying lawyer bullshit. That isn't really lawyer bullshit at all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's not in any bar that I know, and not even a real bar. But I would say that the biggest problem that I think CBS and Paramount had wasn't just the fact that he was touting himself as an independent feature, which I think creates problems. Because like Tommy Kraft, who did Star Trek Horizon, told me early on, it would be like 20th Century Fox saying, you know what, we're going to do an independent Star Trek film. Like where do you draw the line on that? Where is it no longer a violation? But I think that their biggest sin was turning this into a commercial venture, which is doing the studio, paying the principals. I mean, Alec Peters, admits to taking at least $38,000 in salary last year, plus expenses from the money raised in donations. And he says that's not profit. But I'm sorry, if you are enriching yourself by providing yourself a salary, in every single, capitalist view that I've ever seen, that's considered enrichment.
Not just that, Michael. But we both have a mutual friend, Michael Medeiros, who does a GNT show, and he was accused of doxing Alex's
I was
grandson,
too, by the way.
or godson. I'm sorry.
No, that was me actually that got accused of that.
Oh well, so was Michael. He PM'd him.
Michael defended me.
That's the thing. Everybody who instantly attacks Alec Peters
was it you?
is accused of doxing him in some fashion.
Oh,
yeah. So
I might have gotten mixed up. So
yeah,
okay,
Michael
so
Medeiros
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, Michael Medeiros got accused of one thing, I think, but I think a lot of it was because he ended up defending my position because, I had picked up a tip that Alec Peters had created a company in February of 2015 called Woodland Terrace Investments in Florida. Yeah. It was a Florida corporation, and Florida was my home base for 20 years. So, and that's where I did all my business reporting. So if there's business stuff there, if there's real estate, anything like that, I'm going to find it.
You got the connections.
Yeah, that's my home base. So I'm going to find it. And so I just, and Florida public records are really open. I mean, our corporate records are totally open. I mean, you can look up my companies in Florida. I mean, it's so easy to find that stuff. So we found this Woodland Terrace Investments Corporation, which was created in February 2015, the same time that Alec Peters was raising $1.5 million or $1.3 million. And suddenly there's this company that he created with this other woman who I don't know in Orlando, and he used an address as a corporate address. So of course I cross-checked the address to see is this a studio, is this whatever it is, and it came back to a condo that is owned by Alec Peters that he paid cash for like a couple of years ago, and a few years ago. I'm not sure how long ago it was now. Well, so all I did was post in a Facebook group like, hey, I don't know what this is. This could just be that he's trying to protect this property, but he doesn't have the property titled under this company, which is what would protect it. Just having the company doesn't protect it. But this is the corporate address, which he publicly provided on a form that makes it clear that whatever you provide there is public information. It's publicly available online.
Right.
And that's all I said. Well, then Peters came back and it's like that I exposed his godchildren or something because his godchildren live at that address. And now I've opened them up to threats and everything else. And I'm like, the only person that's saying your godchildren live there is you. I just said that there is an address. You are the owner by name, by your own personal name, and this is this corporation, and I just want to know what this corporation is.
Okay, so you're saying that Michael Medeiros, our friend, our mutual friend for the rest of us, he was just backing you up, and that's why he got threatened?
If I remember that right. If I remember right, I think he was. He was just defending me on it. So
better than anybody. I was just trying to remember because I thought for sure he was the one that got doxxed for that, but. Okay. So
he might have been doxxed on something else, though, because to be honest, so much has happened.
The person who actually the person we are all thinking of who got doxxed is Steve Midnight Shadow 7 Roberts.
Oh, from Triples and Ecstasy.
Yes, yes, because that happened quite a bit later.
See how it all gets mixed up?
That happened.
It is.
That happened when Alec decided he wanted to start refunding all the people he was kicking from his donor rolls and donor groups and stuff.
Oh, and he showed the PayPal with his address and information and everything else.
Yep.
Yeah, that's doxing, by the way. Releasing public available information is not doxing. So that's one thing I had to try to explain to Alec Peters, which I thought was odd because I thought he was the attorney by training. And so I had to explain that you cannot dox with information that anybody can access. I mean, you could go right now into the Florida Corporation's website. You can pull up that address. You can go to the Orange County, which is the county in Orlando where the property is, type that address in and get all the same information that I provided.
Well, let me ask you this, Michael. What is your prediction as far as there's another subject I'm going to bring up in about a second here, but as far as actually, hold on, I'm going to reserve that question. There's one other recent thing that happened, and that was that Alec Peters brought up. He tried to gather his alumni of fan production producers to try to get them to agree to some kind of a sort of like
another step in the realm of BS.
Yeah, it's almost like the small council on Game of Thrones, I guess.
But see, that's the problem. That's the problem. A lot of these people weren't one, okay, some of these people were drug into this conversation knowing what was going on, but when you are invited to a group on Facebook, somebody puts your name in, and
Was
you
it just
have no
Facebook?
say whether or not you are even in this group until you actually look at the group and see what's going on.
Yeah.
And
In
that's
fact,
what
I think it was actually
that's
just a
what
group
happened.
conversation too. Like I don't even think it was that he literally like and Carlos Pedraza, who runs Axe Monitor, he knows this better because he's the one that's actually read the
Yeah, Axanar.
transcript of this.
I respect them. Yep.
But yeah, but and Carlos is somebody I've known for a very long time. He's a really good guy and very upfront, very honest, and very fair.
Yeah,
I mean, he even
Carlos
tells
was on
me
that.
to back
Yeah,
off.
go ahead.
I mean, he tells me to back off like all the time. That I'm coming on too strong. Because he's just a nice guy. He's an overall nice guy. But but I believe that it's not even that they created a Facebook group. I think that they just did a group chat on Facebook. Is how I understood that went. So that people were just invited to this group chat,
Right.
which is basically a message, on Facebook. You're using your messenger, and you're just in there with a whole bunch of people. And you might not even know the conversation. Like I have probably just in this 26 minutes, and we've been talking here. There are probably, if I go to my Facebook right now, I probably have about 100 open messages because of people just messaging me. And I don't even pay attention to half of them. And who knows? Some of them could be group conversations where they're discussing fan film guidelines, and Alec Peters is going to say, "Oh, look, Michael Hinman was involved with this," and I didn't even know what was going on.
John.
Speaking of,
go ahead, Russ.
Obviously, there's a lot of.
You're cutting out.
Hello,
Ross.
Hello.
Yeah,
cut
go ahead,
out.
Russ.
I'm here. You guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, so people get pretty emotional over this subject, and I wonder how well you deal with that, because I'm looking at something that came up on my Facebook feed from the CBS Paramount versus Axanar page, and the first line is "Hinman is scum," trademarked.
What?
Yes, that's our. You have to understand, Carlos Pedraza and Jody Wheeler and I, like ever since, that's one of the nice things that's come about this, because I've known Carlos and Jody for a long time, because they were involved with Star Trek fan film productions way back when, and now they actually do independent features and stuff outside of Star Trek, and are great people. And so the nice thing about Axanar is that the three of us are in a Facebook conversation every single night, and and some of the jokes is we have to keep it light, because it's when people say nasty crap about you, you have to kind of laugh it off and everything, but it still affects you sometimes,
Of course,
especially if
you're human.
people, because people pile on, and just so we have to keep it light. And so our running joke is that Hinman is scum, so that's what Carlos will always say, because that's what what Axanar claims, that I'm scum and that Carlos is something else, and and Jody is this. So we kind of assign ourselves names, and I more recently became Adolf Hinman because apparently
Adolf Hinman.
Wow.
Because apparently Alec Peters thought it was funny to call a Jewish person a Nazi. So
Nice.
You got to watch out for the scum trademark, because that currently belongs to
Star
LucasArts.
Wars, right? So we have to be careful.
I know that John had a question for you, though. John, you had talked about this before the show started. You wanted to know why the petition to what was the problem there, right? You know what I mean?
Right, so I heard that the petition is going around and Alec Peters wants to lay down or at least create some kind of guidelines for all the other fan films to follow. So I guess the question is, I know what the guidelines are, but it seems like this has not been approved by CBS or Paramount.
Yeah, I mean the guidelines were basically when CBS and Paramount had to scramble a couple of weeks ago to put out a statement after J.J. Abrams. From everything I understand, that nobody was expecting him to say that. Although Carlos said that he heard from somebody that Paramount was expecting J.J. to say something, but that's not what I'm hearing, at least from the CBS side. That they were totally caught off guard, and so at 1:00 in the morning, they're like trying to write up statements, and get a statement out. And one of the things they said is like, "Hey, we are going to work on fan film guidelines," which is something that Paramount insisted to go into the statement. And and the thing and what Peters is trying to do is that Peters felt that because he's having this conversation with CBS and Paramount, and by conversation I mean settlement talks, because he's being sued by them, that somehow he should be invited into the conversation of fan film guidelines, because as far as Peters is concerned, he's won. even though the lawsuit hasn't been settled. It's still there, and and it's still continuing. But he feels that he's won, so now that he should get the spoils of helping to create this. When they didn't invite him, I don't think they invited any fan films, from what I understand. That they're doing this with their lawyers, away from all of this. He decided that what we're going to do is we're going to finally do this united front that he probably should have done in the first place instead of throwing everybody under the bus, and get fan films together and say, hey, we can police ourselves. Because here's the thing about these guidelines. These guidelines are not going to be like, oh, hey, you get more freedoms, or hey, you can still do what you're doing as long as you don't do like Axanar. What's going to happen is that these fan films are going to be highly restrictive. They most likely are going to limit your time probably down to 20 minutes, maybe even less than that. You're not going to be able to crowdfund. You're not going to be able to do a lot of things. That you're not going to be able to pay a single person, even actors, and that you can't use professionals. I mean, these are what the fan film guidelines most likely will be. And guess how many of these people are going to be pissed off at Alec Peters when that happens?
So I saw, I guess it was a draft on a website. One of the guidelines is the productions have to be 50 minutes in length because that was the length of the original series episodes.
Yeah, and remember, that's just what these, what Alec Peters and three other people put together. We don't know if this is what anything that CBS is putting together.
In today's world, it would be 45 because you have to leave room for the commercials.
That's right.
Sure.
It would be 45.
There's also the discussion of, well, who actually wrote these? Because all of this, most of the people who were involved in the discussion say none of us wrote anything. We commented on the fact that these things were here already, but none of us wrote or added anything.
Oh, I'm sure it was Alec Peters who wrote
Right,
these.
yes.
Which I also think is hilarious. If Alec Peters wrote these guidelines, it's like, here are the guidelines. Too bad you can't do all the shit that I just did.
Yeah, and basically, and what we think too is like, it's funny when Carlos and Jody and I, we just talk about this, and I think, and I'm sure I'm not talking out of school, but so Carlos, forgive me. But the one thing that we think is that that he put these out there and saying like, well, we would all be grandfathered in, and so like we'll get to still do what we're already doing, but nobody else can do this now.
It's very fascinating.
That's arrogant.
Mm-hmm, right.
Well,
that's Alec Peters.
He's
Magnum
literally turning into Garth of Izar.
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing. He played him, right?
Yeah, I think he's getting too deep into the role.
Magnum or Will, do you guys have any questions?
I don't right now.
No, not right now. I'm just
All right,
enjoying the conversation.
I was just checking.
So,
Making sure.
So then I guess the point of these guidelines are to get something out there before CBS and Paramount might come down with something a little more restrictive?
Yeah, I think that what he's trying to do is insert himself into that conversation because he wasn't invited into it, and he probably feels that he should be a part of that conversation. I don't know why. When I want to, regulations, I don't invite Bernie Madoff. So, it's just, I don't understand like how that works out in that way. But I don't know. It's just that I think that what he's trying to do is because I'm going to be honest. If you told me like at the end of December when this story first broke that even if we went as far as we did in this court case where we're almost to discovery, like how many stories would 1701 News have done? And I would have said on the very, very extreme high end, it would have been 9. Because we would have probably covered a couple of the filings here and there. Maybe the lawyers do an interview somewhere, maybe even with us. So you might get a couple of those in there, but that's it. But, because usually what happens is when you get sued, you put out a statement and then you shut up. You don't.
Unlike Alex.
You're not supposed to talk about active pending
you
litigation.
I mean,
and Alec Peters has been out in front of that, just jawing off at the everything.
Especially on social media, like on Nick Manetsi's Facebook post.
And and the problem is that even in like the interview that he did with 1701 News, that burned him directly because when CBS and Paramount filed their amended complaint, they quoted the story where he says we violate IP less than all the other ones, and so that's basically saying yes, we do violate your IP. That's basically an admission that you violate the intellectual property.
Well, we don't do it quite as bad as all the other guys. That's like saying to a cop, "What? I wasn't selling the pot. I was just smoking a gram of cocaine, or snorting, or whatever. I didn't actually sell it."
Yeah, my analogy I use is because like I think that somebody from Axanar tried to say it's like, but that's not admitting. That's not admitting that there's a. That's not admitting that there's, that they're violating IP. It's like, yeah, but I'm not a murderer, and if I'm not a murderer, I would say I'm not a murderer. I wouldn't say, well, I murder less than Dexter.
Right, and then right, we don't infringe as much as.
As what? As what?
Oh, I think we lost him.
John, you left us hanging.
Yeah, no, now that's a cliffhanger. Now I don't know. Do I have to wait all summer?
Dun 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 dun.
He'll be
Will
back.
he kill Picard?
Sometimes he has problems with his mic.
Does he kill Picard or will he rescue him? I don't know. Now I gotta wait all summer to find out.
A murderer.
Murderer?
Nice best of both worlds reference.
He'll be back.
He'll
pipe, when he pipes in, we'll all back off. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, it just, by the way, speaking of best of both worlds, when they put that together into like one movie and they showed it, like when they showed it in theaters and stuff because they did it remastered.
Yeah.
The thing that I didn't like about it is that they took out all the dramatic music.
You make a
when
good
they said
point. Okay,
fire,
John's back.
Oh, John, welcome back. So, okay,
John, what were you trying to say?
About Next Generation.
You left us hanging, bro. Kind of like a bad date.
And he's still leaving us hanging.
He's
not
leaving us
coming
hanging.
back.
You know what?
I love Best of Both Worlds in theaters. That was such an experience.
Not to sidetrack, but I remember that summer because I was just a kid back then. I think I was in my late teens, and when Best of Both Worlds came out, as soon as that cliffhanger came out, where he said "Fire, Mr. Worf," I went to a movie theater. We had to wait a whole summer before the Best of Both Worlds Part 2, which didn't quite live up to the. That's another story.
Well, they didn't even plan the second episode when they wrote the first one.
Yes, John, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now? Okay, there we go. Try this again. Okay, so the Axanar people say, well, we don't infringe as much as those other people. And then those other people say, hey, thanks for bringing us into this. Now Paramount has some more targets to go after.
Ah.
Yep.
Well, not really, because Paramount and CBS already knew that these, because Star Trek Continues does indeed infringe on copyright. Star Trek New Voyages does indeed infringe on copyright.
Right.
CBS and Paramount have the right as the holder of the copyright to how they enforce it. Where they can say, you know what, as long as you guys, if you're doing what you're doing, we're okay with it. That's fine. You go ahead and do it. They don't. It's not trademark where you have to defend every violation of it.
Right. No, but my point is
take a story of me, take my stories, and if they take the whole text of the story and they put it up on a message board somewhere, yeah, I could say that's copyright infringement. Or I could say, you know what, it doesn't really affect me. I'm not going to spend time on it. But it's my right to do that.
Right, but the point was that instead of trying to defend his own production, he said, well, let's try to spread the blame to all these other people.
Well, really what
and now he's going back to the other people and saying, well, I know I tried to throw you under the bus, but let's all make some guidelines together.
But see, this is the contradictory nature that Alec Peters took into this without having like a game plan on how you would defend this. What he was doing was he was going in and he's, that he wanted to say, hey, no. Why is CBS and Paramount singling us out? We're just a fan film. But in the same conversation, which you see like an interview that he did with us, in the same exact conversation, he differentiates himself from these other fan films. Like, hey, we're not a fan film. We're not Elvis impersonators and voice actors, slamming the other, the principles of these other fan film productions, who are really good people, by the way. So he's trying to sit there and say, we're the same as them, so don't sue us. But when you're done suing us, remember, we're way better than they are.
Axanar is like an infomercial.
He's literally the Donald Trump of the Trek franchise.
He's the infomercial of the Trek.
Whatever comes out of his mouth at that time, he believes to be the truth.
Yeah, but what he reminds me of is those late night infomercials. You know what I mean? But it's for Trek. Like, do this and pitch in this, and you'll get this, and it's like, oh, but we're Star Trek, so, we're legit.
He's like the poor Donald Trump, but yeah.
There was another subject of this, why I wanted to talk to you, Michael. There's many reasons why I wanted to talk to you, but one of the biggest ones, since we've kind of beat to death the Alec Peters part, something a little separate, but involves you, Sarah. You wrote your last article that you wrote on 1701 News, or 1701 News, is whatever you want to call yourselves. involves the new Trek series. Now, this bothers me a little bit, and I want to talk about this. You discussed how there's a few citable possibilities that even though we've heard all this stuff about, and Ross, we broke this news when we figured it out one episode about how it's going to be in the anthology series. Michael has written an article where there's still a lot of evidence that it could still take place in the JJ universe. Now, this has caused a little bit of flack because what this means is that although this all could be true, that it could be taking place in the future, in the past, in the undiscovered country time period, Michael's article is suggesting that we may actually be seeing the future beyond the movies of the JJ version of the time periods. Now, this could be good, and it could be bad. I don't think it's going to go over very well with the hardcore Trek fans who are all hoping that it was going to be a Prime show. Michael, would you care to elaborate on your article there?
Well, and the biggest thing to remember, and, IO9 just picked up this story, I think we published like a week ago, and IO9 just picked it up. But, and so I've been getting a lot of messages on this, and I'm like, remember, we're not saying that it's definitely in the Abrams verse or that it's even most likely.
You have some concerns about it.
We're just, we're expressing, just some of the stuff that we're hearing from the different people that we talk to at CBS, where this might go. And really, and from what I'm also hearing is that they're still in like early development in this series, even though they should be a little bit further along, because there's still been a lot of debate on where to go with this, which I think is another reason why there's a lot of conflicting information. But because I think there's a lot of people who are trying to put out their own ideas, basically, and trying to test them in, in the public consciousness. But here's the thing: if they decided to go with the Abrams verse universe, the Abrams verse, I guess I can just say, it makes sense in a way because for the last, what years is 2016? For the last 7 years, we have lived in the Abrams verse. A lot of these Star Trek fans, these people that bought millions and millions of tickets to see Star Trek and Star Trek Into Darkness, are people who are experiencing Star Trek in the Abrams verse. The people who are familiar with the Prime verse, we haven't seen a canon Prime universe story since 2005. That was 11 years ago. If I'm not a math person, but
I'll tell you this, my friend.
And it's like, and that's a long time ago.
I'll tell you this, my friend. Ever since I read your article, I was all happy that everybody gets their way. They're like, hey, they listen to us. They know that the fans want the Prime universe, so they're doing an anthology thing. Now, my opinion was that it was going to be some kind of a time agent hopping back and forth like Sam Beckett from Quantum Leap. That was how I felt they might be doing it. Ross and I, we all talked about this on Super Geeks, like how much they could do it like American Horror Story, like an anthology thing. Like each year, it's a different era in the Trek universe. And so, but you could have a continuous thing where you have this one character or two characters or three characters or whoever from time agents jumping back and forth, and that's why you have an explanation for why they're hopping around the eras. But when you threw that article out there, I had two conflicting thoughts. I hated the fact that I liked the idea of the JJ thing, and I'll tell you why. We've only seen the Kirk era from what's been changed. This would give them an opportunity. In the comics we've seen
up to DS9.
This would give them an opportunity to quickly show us the broad strokes. You could have an entire season with recast members of TNG in the JJ verse. That blows my mind as far as how they could redo that. I mean, some fans may hate it, but the point I'm making is, as an artistic expression, that opens the door for not a horrible idea, but yet a controversial idea, because you have these two side-by-side things. The fans want to go forward with the Prime, and if you jump around in the Prime, they're happy. But what if they did jump around in the JJ? We see the future of the alternative universe beyond Chris Pine in them. That's kind of cool. I mean, I hate to say it. It sounds kind of traitorous, but I wouldn't mind seeing that. But yet, at the same time, for them to take a gamble to take that entire new series and do that, I don't know. They have some pretty bold chops to do that. So I'm not sure which way they could be going here.
I hate to burst your bubble, but the only way for that to happen would be for CBS to get the rights to the movie universe.
Yeah. Yep.
And Michael,
that's
wouldn't you
not happening anytime soon?
But Michael, your article, didn't that express that?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, one thing you have to remember is that there are some shared rights, and so just like how how Paramount was able to use Prime Universe elements, because remember Spock, Leonard Nimoy Spock is a Prime Universe character from the Prime Universe. They don't. There's no ownership technically on which universe. Like there's no copyright on canon. And that's the thing that I keep seeing that's out there. It's like, well, they don't have the copyright on the JJ verse. It's like they might not have the copyright on a revamped Kirk and Spock, but there's nothing that says that CBS cannot step in and do something after that or before that in that same universe. And another thing too is that this anthology discussion. The one reason why I had issues with the Birth Movies Death, is that the name of that site? I think that's what it's called. Why I had issues with their reporting on this is because I felt that they presented it too solidly as rumor or even as news, as verified news, when it's really just gossip. And a lot of it's based on the same gossip that created, the whole idea that, that different people were going to star in the show, because it was based on Brian Fuller's interviews of like 4 years ago of like who would be his dream casting. And all of a sudden, Angela Bassett's suddenly the new captain, and she's not.
Right.
And the thing about the anthology discussion, the thing about doing something in between, even, Star Trek VI and Star Trek The Next Generation, is that these were things that were talked about over the last few years that what would be interesting ideas. I think I could even find a column that I wrote, I think in 2012 or 2013 or 2014, where I think I expressed the ideas that if Star Trek comes back, it should be on Showtime. It should be somewhere where they're only doing 10 to 12 episodes, where that it's an anthology because, American Horror Story was really big. And so
that
why
was the
not?
comparison that I made.
These are things that are out there that I think we just have to be careful about, just in terms of, like let's talk about, like, it could be an anthology, but let's not, like, I get worried that fans are getting too much, like, where they're settled that it definitely is, and that it's definitely taking place in this time period or in this universe, and it's really not.
But Michael, let me ask you this: if it was set, let's just open our minds for a minute. If it was a time agent who, like Sam Beckett, had to go back and forth, and you want to express showing the fans, like, everybody has certain eras that they're fans of, right? So if you have a time agent, this is just my opinion, I don't know if they're going to do this, but if you could find a reason, a story-wise excuse for where there's a new time war or whatever, and they have to jump back and forth, temporal Cold War, and you have to jump back and forth, and you have to use that as an excuse for your device, but yet you have like one season, you're not a bottle show like Voyager, and you have like one season where you're on this not Enterprise, but a ship in the undiscovered country era, and then they have to jump ahead to the post DS9 Dominion War era because of the mission. Don't you think that opens up more to the modern audience, because they've accepted?
George, can I say,
jump in.
They've already tried this with Enterprise. They had that whole time thing in that. It didn't work. I'm sorry.
Kind of.
That was
it
way
was the
back.
entire first 3 seasons.
Okay, here's something that'll blow your mind, George.
Go ahead.
Okay, they could get away with doing this, and they could get away with doing this jumping back and forth between both JJ and Prime. You want to know how?
How?
A Federation version of Gary 7.
Oh.
Mm.
I am not opposed to her idea, because
my only issue with all this talk of, the original series, then jump to DS9, then jump to the Next Generation, filling in the gaps, is I'm going to have to pay for this on their CES.
Yes.
And we
So
talked about this.
do
on
you
this
think
show
I really
and
would have paid for
others
something
to
that's
death.
so scattered?
Is that really the issue, though, or are we
Yes,
talking about the
that's why
story
it's going.
first?
That's why I'm not paying for it. I'm sorry.
But
One
it's
that
not-
we've
but-
talked about to death on this show. We don't
Yeah,
need to dig it out
hold
again.
on. We have never heard Michael's point of view on the whole CBS All Access. What do you think, Michael?
Well, here's the thing. And one thing you have to remember, too, jumping around, I know that people would love to see us jump around to different, eras of Star Trek and everything, but we're approaching this as fans, and we're not approaching this as a business. We're not
That's
approaching
true.
this the same way CBS executives are approaching this, which is they want to attract as many people as possible to pay that $5 a month or whatever it is, to get this streaming service. And you're not going to do that if you write something, if you do a Serenity, which Serenity was a great movie, if you were a Firefly fan. But if you were just a general person who wanted to go to the movies and you wanted to watch Serenity, you pretty much had no idea what was going on.
That's a good
because
point.
it was so devoted, it was so great. It was a great, fan, it was very great to honor the fans in that way. But it's not the same thing. CBS is not going to create something that's so deeply Star Trek that you have to know all the history. They are going to do whatever they can to bring in, the vast audience. And I think that's where, and if you keep, you could do anthology with American Horror Story or with crime stories and things like that, because you don't have to explain the universe. You don't have to explain each universe, of the witches, of the hotel, of these different things, the asylum, like of American Horror Story. But in Star Trek, it takes a whole season sometimes to just set the universe. If you're doing that, then you're resetting that every single season. You're going to lose a lot of the general audience.
That's true. You could have a whole season
This is actually why the rumor of like a Star Trek Rescue 911 type thing actually had legitimate weight, is because it wouldn't have all the trappings of you had to know what was going on. It was just a whole bunch of people on a starship going and trying to save lives every day.
Or maybe even a season where they finally experiment with a whole crew of Klingons, right? Or Romulans, or something different, just because they have that format.
Yeah, but you're also not going to do that once again, because you need to have characters that a general audience is going to be able to identify with. And trust me, I think I wrote a comment too long ago where I talked about an old idea I had of doing like a whole Klingon movie, like set in the Kahless era, where it's all in Klingon, just so I could try to get it nominated for best foreign language, for an Oscar. Just to be funny. It was just a joke, more of a thing. But the thing is that if you don't have characters like humans, or things that the audience can relate to, especially a general audience, you're not going to keep that audience around.
There's so much they could do that it blows the mind. Damn. I don't know. What would you... All right, so Michael, let me ask you this. If you had to choose right now, based on your personal opinion, about what... not the first season, because we already know they're going to do the Red Jacket, Undiscovered Country era. But assuming it's an anthology... Well, we have heard many credible... I want to say the word credible rumors.
I haven't heard them. I've heard that, and I've heard about 15 other things.
Even Dayton Ward has got reliable sources.
Yeah, but Dayton Ward is just being funny.
Okay, let's assume... All right.
Yeah,
humor me,
see,
Michael. Michael,
that's my whole point.
Humor me. We're going to get the Red Jacket era first, and then the second season is going to be in the... wherever. What era of Star Trek would you want to go forward, like 100 years? What would you like to see?
Well, what I suggested when they first announced the series, like what I thought would be awesome, is that and you actually talked about it a little bit. Is I would love to see what Next Generation looks like in the Abrams verse.
I wouldn't mind either, to be honest with you.
Because that's the thing, is that you have to, because it has to be different. And the reason why I'm struggling with the idea that we're going to go post Star Trek 6 pre TNG, and I know everybody's like looking at the teaser trailer like, hey, look, that's this and this, where somebody else actually pointed out that those two like that star, that planet and those stars were from Star Trek the movie in 2009. It's from the ending credits, which had nothing to do with any of that.
Actually, hold on. I'm not trying to interrupt you to be rude, but just let me point this out because it's been a passionate thing I posted on Facebook.
Yeah.
If you look at the I don't know how old you are, Michael, but I'm 45. Back when TNG...
I'm 19.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
I know you're not, because I've seen your pictures. So, anyways, you're bald. You got. Anyways,
I'm not bald.
Okay, you shaved. But anyways, the point is,
now you're being rude.
No, I'm not being rude.
Yeah, that was pretty rude, George.
No, I'm not being rude.
You're not 19. You're bald-headed.
Let's put him on a 5-minute timeout.
No, I'm good. But listen. So I watched the original back in 1990. I think it was 6. No, sorry. Whatever year was just before Next Generation came out.
86.
Yeah, 96.
86, early 87.
So they posted this teaser trailer where you saw, it wasn't even footage from the actual show because they weren't ready yet, but they wanted to make everybody get excited. They wanted everybody psyched. So they posted this, and I showed this on Facebook, and Larry Nembisic recognized what I posted because he liked it too. It was a thing where you saw lots of footage from the movies really quick, and like there was like a new series is coming to television, a new show is about to begin, a new legend is about to begin, Star Trek: The Next Generation. But you didn't see any actual footage from the show because they were in the middle of
Because there wasn't
filming
any,
it.
yeah.
So when they posted this teaser trailer for the new show on CBS, in my mind, it was a similar. They were sort of capturing that. They were trying to recreate that same idea where you show a bunch of footage, you show a bunch of CGI, not actual footage, but you get people excited that there's a new Star Trek coming out.
It's a standard teaser trailer, and I agree.
Exactly.
And it's a teaser trailer, especially before you go into production that you put out there.
Saying.
Well, but here's the thing, though. Here's the difference, though, between this new trailer, this teaser trailer, and the one that was out for Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Okay.
And the biggest difference is that Gene Roddenberry did not go to a website or on his Twitter back then or anywhere and say, look at this trailer. There are Easter eggs in it. There's a big difference, and which is one reason why people are looking at this new trailer, because Brian Fuller went on Twitter or somewhere and said there's Easter eggs in this trailer.
There's no Easter eggs. They just made a bunch of CGI.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of recycled shots mostly from the Star Trek 2009 movie, and that's
so
what
they told
it
people
is.
there are Easter eggs to go get them watch the trailer so they get more views.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe
much.
there are some Easter eggs, and maybe the Easter egg
Standard
is
in modern marketing.
Well, and I mean, and it's common to reuse shots. I mean, even in the movies, when
how many
bird
times
of
have we
prey
seen that
blows
bird of prey
up
blow up?
Yeah, that explosion in Star Trek Generations was the same one they used in Star Trek V, but nobody knows it because nobody watched Star Trek V. But but if you watch those two movies, it's the same.
I liked Star Trek V. I don't know what you're talking about. I wanted to see
No, he's talking
God.
about Star Trek 6. I'm sorry.
So you are God.
The bird of prey exploded.
Yeah, but they have the wrong.
On Star Trek 6
cultural
and
person.
Generations.
Oh
the
no,
same
you're right.
shot.
Star Trek 6, not Star Trek 5. You're right. I'm sorry.
And then Generations.
Yeah, so they reused it there, and they reused other shots in different places too. I mean, the Klingon, when the Klingon ships show up in the Kobayashi Maru simulation in Star Trek 2, it's the same exact footage from Star
the
Trek: The
motion
Motion
picture.
Picture.
Yep.
But the thing is, I've mentioned on this show is it didn't get me excited in '86 because it hadn't been on TV for 20 some odd years. You've seen a couple of movies. They were bringing it back. It was a big hit. Now you got the movies. You got the James.
Well, no,
but
they didn't think
fair.
Next Generation was going to be a hit.
Yeah, but I mean, for the fans, it did, right?
Right.
But I'm a fan, and I'm not getting excited for the show. I'm sorry.
Then you're not a good enough fan.
No, but that's
Wait for
actually,
the pilot.
But no, but
Well, at
that's
least
actually
according to
very
Alec
fair.
Peters, right?
No, but this is fair because, when the Star Trek: The Next Generation trailer came out, remember, before Next Generation, outside of the animated series, we only had 3 seasons of Star Trek and a few movies. We only had 5 up there. No, not even that. We only had 3 up to that point.
That's a good point.
I don't even think Star Trek 4 had come out yet, and or it just had come out. So we had 4. So really, there was a lot of excitement because there wasn't a lot of Star Trek. But since then, we've seen what happens when Paramount goes overboard, and puts out too much Star Trek at once, and they leave people in power they shouldn't leave in power. And and we see what happens where you get shows that by the time Star Trek Enterprise was really winding down, you were happy to see it end. And so
that
makes a
point.
big difference.
That's a good point.
Well, I have to say a lot of this falls squarely on the joint venture of CBS and Paramount, specifically because of them getting together and trying to use Star Trek to launch an entire freaking network. Voyager.
Well, I mean, but it's not a bad idea, And the thing was, like,
well, it's
even
not,
when you,
it's not a bad idea, but I mean, we saw the ramifications of that.
Well, no, what we saw though is poor execution. I think, like where Star Trek Voyager really had a pretty damn cool premise. Let's put enemies on a ship together, make them work together. So you have built-in conflict. You have all of these things, and if you watch the first season of Voyager, you see some of that conflict, and it's interesting. But then by the second season, they totally forgot.
Yeah, that's what pissed me off. The first officer becomes irrelevant. He just starts becoming a yes man.
Yeah, he's just Joe Biden, with a tattoo on his face.
Yeah, exactly, and that's
that happens when you change up writers in the middle of production. I have the same complaint about Spider-Man between 2 and 3. Hey, what? I can see the writers' room now. Hey, what did Mary Jane do again? She was on Broadway or something. Broadway singer. Got it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we'll put her in a bar and she could sing Broadway.
Yeah, but the sins of Star Trek in television is the fact that they also needed to change it up. They did Enterprise too late. They brought in somebody. Why can't I even think of his name now? But they brought in somebody who was able to at least make the fourth season halfway palatable and make changes that were totally necessary for the show. But when you keep people on there, when you keep Gene on for too long, when you keep Brandon Braga on for too long, and these are very talented people. Even Ron Moore knew when to walk away. When enough is enough.
Well, then
it's time for fresh blood.
Yeah, I mean, I liked the fourth season of Enterprise, but I knew it was going to go away. The thing is, I think it was either when they went on that long revenge thing against the Xindi.
Xindi, yeah.
It lost me. I mean,
wasn't that the entire season 3?
Yeah, whatever it was. It just an entire season. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah, 3 and 4.
It just lost me on that.
Yeah, it was. And it's just. And season 4 was better because. Why can't I think of his name? It's like the guy who took over, and I'll think of it as soon as we get off.
I think wasn't it Manny Cotto?
Yeah, Manny Cotto. Manny Cotto. There you go. I don't know why I couldn't think of his name, but
you also have to remember people misremember season 3 of Enterprise.
Yeah, they do.
They say it was a revenge arc. No, that it was only a revenge arc if you're looking at it from the point of view of Trip.
That's true.
Because the whole time Archer is like, we have to stop these people from building another weapon that's going to destroy the entire planet.
She has a good point.
Stop them is not the same thing as killing them all for revenge.
Well, you got to stop them from building a giant sphere which blows up planets.
And and I think Trip is also angry because the Xindi because apparently the Xindi destroyed a part of Florida that I was actually living in at the time, and they missed. So I don't know how they killed her if she was 100 miles the opposite way, but the geography was just a little bit off too.
I would love to see the new Star Trek come out after Janeway got back. And then they pulled her out of the ship and put her behind a desk. That's what I would like to see. What happened next?
Got promoted and got the ship.
Star Trek 9 to 5.
By the way, the new writer just brought in for the new Star Trek series, the author Kirsten Beyer. She actually wrote a bunch of Voyager books. She was like the Voyager writer,
she did.
And she actually tackles a lot of this stuff. Yeah, and it's all post-Voyager stuff. And it's actually, I haven't read them because I don't read, but I hear that it's, they're actually pretty interesting.
As I understand, she handled Janeway's resurrection.
To me, I would love to see that. That's the natural progression. We have enough of the original series. We've gone through how many episodes of the Next Generation? 7? Right, and then we have the Enterprise, which is the prequel. Then we have DS9 with the Dominion War. Let's move forward.
Here's what I'd like to see.
That's what I like.
I'd like to see something completely independent of both Prime and the reboot. A completely new Star Trek that is based in our universe. That starts with our present as their past. Instead of starting in the 60s and then moving forward to Turnabout Intruder, where apparently women aren't allowed to be in command of starships.
Does anybody remember the episode Parallels?
The one with Worf when he hopped around Quantum Universes?
Yeah. Just okay. Any number of those universes could be taken and used, and any number of those universes could have exactly what you're talking about, Ross.
But let's
where we take our current history, where our present right now, and our immediate history is the future. Or is the past of a future Star Trek.
But but the thing is we still have to come back to the business side of this, and the fact is, it's the same reason why Paramount insisted, because I don't know, you guys remember when Eric Jenderson was supposed to write the new Star Trek movie, before J.J. Abrams came on board, and Eric Jenderson, who's the Emmy Award-winning writer for Band of Brothers, he was doing a prequel which would take place after Star Trek Enterprise, but still before Kirk.
I thought the one they were working on was for the Academy.
No, this is kind of an Academy story, but not. It was the Romulan War.
Okay.
And I know because I called out Eric early on in a column, and Eric sent me a nasty email, and we became friends after that. And so,
as you do,
I love how that works.
That's how it all works, right? And no grudges there, I guess. But But what happened was is that Eric was not a Star Trek fan. He didn't really he was given a bunch of material, but what he decided to do was like, hey, I got Hinman here. I'll just call him if I don't know, or if I'm not sure if it's Star Trek or not. And so he would call me up and he would read, like, because he wouldn't send it to me because he knew better because I ran a spoiler site. So, but he would read to me with the threat of killing me if I ever said anything, pages from the script that he was writing. And he would share these different things. And he actually shared this huge battle, of this Romulan war. And he was all excited. And he read it very well, by the way. It was very entertaining. It was very strong. And we got to the end of it, and I'm just like, well, where are the nuclear weapons? And he's like, what the blank are you talking about?
From TOS,
it's the future.
Balance of Terror.
There's no nuclear weapons in the future. It's like, well, in Balance of Terror, Spock said it was a nuclear war, so you need nuclear weapons. And all I heard him do was cuss a bunch and hang up the phone. I didn't hear from him for a week while he rewrote those portions of it. But but the thing is that one of the things that happened when the new guard came in at Paramount. And why? Because if you ever read Eric Jenderson's script is online somewhere, you could find it. It's a very good read, by the way. It's so strong. Like he and I were even talking about the fact that we should do a story, just recently, like maybe like several months ago before the new series got announced. Like we should try to promote this, like the pieces of this movie as a new series, because you could make like half of that movie into a pilot and do a kick-ass Star Trek series from this. And and it's so well done, but the reason why Paramount decided to change gears on this is because they knew they had to put in familiar elements. They needed the Enterprise, they needed Kirk, they needed Spock, they needed McCoy, because these were familiar elements. And I think CBS is going to take that same approach, that CBS is going to come in and say, we need common elements that are going to pull in a vast audience, because Star Trek and Star Trek Into Darkness, they combined to make $850 million in worldwide box office. That they sold 60 million tickets. And that's because they used common elements. It's going to be hard for CBS to ignore that and say, all right, let's go deep into Star Trek folklore to where only Larry Nemechek and 3 other people would really understand what the hell we're talking about. I mean, you can't do that.
Well, I mean,
nice call out.
You make a great point. Geez, the thing is that whatever happens on this new show, the talent they brought in. Who is that lady that they just announced was one of the writers?
Kristen Beyer.
Yeah. What has she done? Now, I haven't had a chance to go back and research her. What has she done?
We just covered this, George.
We just covered this.
Yeah, she's the author for Star Trek.
She wrote a bunch of books on Star Trek Voyager.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She wrote all the after Voyager books.
Yeah, so
Which is what I would like to see. I would love to see that.
I think they've got a lot of good ideas, and they're very determined to bring in the right producers, showrunners, writers, and co-producers on this show. Whatever direction they decide to go, I have to admit, I'm hoping they don't go with the JJ thing. I wouldn't hate the idea, but I would be like cringing if they do it, because they know the fans are gonna flip the hell out.
Fans are gonna flip the hell out. The fans are already flipping the hell out.
They're gonna flip out. You're gonna get somebody who's gonna flip out over something no matter what. But flipping out gets attention. That's what happened with Battlestar Galactica. People flipped out over Battlestar Galactica, and guess what? People tuned in.
That you got a good point. This could be their way of legitimizing it. That's true. Because you got to realize that when they did this change in the JJ verse, it wasn't just the fact that they did it, but you got this one movie and then you wait 2 years, and another movie and then you wait 2 years. So they have to it's not, if you had a TV show where they were doing this, it would have been more accepted quicker if they had time on their hands.
Yeah, and if they have time to explain things, they have time to bring it out. But you have to capture people's interest from the beginning, because especially in today's day and age, and this isn't something you can just binge watch and and be able to catch up. Like Orange is the New Black. I didn't like the first few episodes, so it took me a long time to get through that first season.
What?
But
I only started watching it when there was naked people.
Look,
the first
season's
season's not good.
Finished the current season.
But luckily they were all they were all there, so I could still go back and watch it. And then I did, and I fell in love with the show. And but Star Trek, this new Star Trek, is not going to have that unless people wait until after it runs its course in the first season. They're not going to be able to binge watch this because it's going to come out every week, a new episode every week. It's not going to be all at once.
All right, then I have a question for you guys then. Do you think people will be willing to pay for CBS All Access?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
I'm not.
Nope.
Right.
Same
I'll
people.
tell you why. I gave it a
Initially,
chance.
people there will be the hardcore fans who will jump on it immediately. In the
The
first
answer
place,
is both yes
anyway.
and no. I'll
But
tell you why.
there are the people who are going to wait until it's all out and then purchase it to binge watch it. And by the time that happens, CBS is going to say, "Yeah, this is a success," or "No, this was a complete failure. We're getting rid of it."
So what I'm going to do?
Here's the thing.
I'm going to wait until they're all out, and then I'm going to get the week free or the week
I
thing, and then
actually
I'll watch it.
subscribe to the free trial of CBS All Access. This is the reason I'm chiming in on this, and I hated it, and I'll tell you why. I subscribe to Netflix, and I love Netflix. Netflix is the god of original streaming things. Okay, I just watched The Ranch, for example. That show is awesome. But CBS, okay, so when Supergirl was doing their season finale, I didn't feel like waiting for whatever method I could watch it on. So I decided I got a free offer for CBS All Access for a week. I decided, well, screw it. It's the same week as Supergirl's season finale. Might as well, because I can watch it. Not only was it a pain in the ass, but I just don't like the way they handled their format of how you do it. Okay, I can't explain it.
So it's a layout that you're having an issue with?
No, it's a lot of things.
The user interface.
The user interface, I don't like. The way they make you wait. They already announced that Star Trek's going to be week by week. You can't just get the whole chunk like you do with Netflix and watch it all at once. I don't like that. I think that they're making a big mistake by doing that way.
Why?
Because I think they're milking us.
But they're not. But that's
even Netflix right now has a few shows that are only coming out weekly.
No, they don't.
No, they don't.
They give
Yes,
you
they
the
do.
majority
Yes,
of
they
Netflix
do.
shows are all
Yes,
like
they
only
do.
the comic.
They-
Well, a couple of the comic shows, but that's only because they film them
guys.
they're
No,
timely.
that's
the
not
only
true
reason.
at all. Netflix has confidence in their shit, so they give you your shows all at once. CBS All Access has no intention of giving you anything but a drag it out week by week, make you wait till the next, it draws from your account so that you pay for the next whatever. And do you really want to watch any of the other shows? No, but you're waiting for Star Trek, so you're like week by week, and they're dragging it out. It's annoying, and I know why they're doing it.
But here's the thing, and I think that that in this distribution model, I think the biggest point that you're missing is that you already do this type of stuff. Like where I live in Grenada, we don't have full cable because it's Grenada, it's an island, in the middle, like right near South America, so there's not a lot there.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with this, but
I do HBO now, and I watch Game of Thrones, I watch Veep, I watch all these different shows. Guess what? They come out once a week, and I pay $15 a month for that. And we don't complain about that. HBO
we don't
has a
pay
lot of
15
confidence in their shows.
We do not pay $15 a month out here. We pay like $99.
I'm glad you geeks got disposable income. I don't. I only got Netflix to pay for.
But the thing is that this is a model. Netflix does a specific model, but remember, Netflix's model was not to do original program. Netflix's original model was simply to have movies available. Then they started making TV shows available, and then it kind of grew from there. And then they felt that there was ways they ended up co-funding a series called Lilyhammer, which became their first series that they offered, and because it had already been produced and aired in wherever country it's from, wherever they did it with the other country, it already had produced the episodes and aired there. Then they had all of this. They just put them all up at once. And then the whole idea of doing House of Cards which was their second series, was that this was a huge experiment. People weren't even sure if binge watching was the right idea.
I'm telling you right now.
Because it comes back to the fact that people would just buy 1 month and then they would quit. The thing is that you bring them in, you show them your library, and I don't have a ton of income right now. I mean, I'm on a sabbatical because I'm helping my better half through medical school in Grenada, so I don't even work a full-time job. But yet, trust me, I'm still spending the money on Netflix, even though I'm not watching any original shows on there right now.
That's my
point.
But
it's still there, and that's what people are going to do with CBS All Access, because in the end, $6 a month, you don't even notice it.
I agree with you, but the problem is CBS All Access, they need to change it. because the free trial I got was not impressive.
But
That's
they
all
will.
I'm saying.
But they will. I can tell you, early Netflix streaming was terrible. And it was even terrible when the first House of Cards came out. We're thinking of Netflix now because they've improved it vastly. I remember, like, when I had my old Netflix account where I got DVDs in the mail and I wanted to stream a couple of movies, when they first started the streaming service, I couldn't even open it up because I had a Mac. And they did not support Mac.
Okay,
and that was the
all right,
only way
let
I
me-
could open. Remember, these things have really evolved, and I think CBS All Access, once they get to put some serious time and get some subscribers in there, you're going to see the interface, and you're going to see a lot of that improve.
All right, so here's a question for you. We've got Netflix streaming right now. Everybody knows how good it is. So why is CBS not as good?
Because
Why are we giving
network.
them? Yeah, but why? They can look at Netflix and use that as an example and say, "Here's what we should do."
No, because
But-
you don't want to copy what everybody else is doing, because when you do that, then all you do is dilute what's offered, and you don't stand out. CBS
Right, but it
has
doesn't
a
sound like
network.
they're doing anything better than Netflix.
Except they have this new Star Trek series, and Netflix doesn't.
Well,
Yeah,
wait a minute,
that's
wait a minute,
the
wait a minute.
catch.
And they
I mean,
had
last-
Spectre
but
for
the-
UPN.
wait a minute.
What happened?
Wait a minute. I mean, they've
Look,
had Supergirl, and they got a pretty good rating. It was in the top 5 at least. They canceled that show because he didn't get the ratings that they wanted. which is
Supergirl
10.
was not in the top 5.
Well,
Yes, it
but-
was.
Supergirl wasn't
it's-
even in the top 25.
Hey, don't talk bad about Supergirl.
But
I,
I mean,
I love Supergirl.
I mean, sorry, but it was
Yeah, me too.
it was doing very well.
It might have been in the
Not for
top
CBS.
5 in its time slot.
Oh,
Not
yeah,
for
okay.
Against
CBS.
4 other shows.
Not for CBS though, because they want 10 million per.
Yes,
what they're
because
expecting.
CBS's ratings are so high that in order for them to compete with themselves, and that's the problem with success, because they have such good ratings everywhere else, then suddenly, like, where shows that, like, I mean, CBS, when I used to cover ratings with Inside Blip, which was one of our old sites, I used to cover ratings I had, like, spreadsheets and everything where I analyzed ratings and did all kinds of stuff. And the thing was, CBS would cancel shows that would be huge hits on NBC. That would be like triple like what their best show was doing, and they were canceling them. But that's part of what happens when you get so many viewers in your other shows, is that everything else then has to live up to that. And if it doesn't, then you got to take it out of there, because when you start putting in anything that might be cancerous, then you start bringing all of your ratings down.
So,
and
well,
CBS
okay.
That's
has done
exactly
that really well.
why-
CBS has been number one for a long
What-
time because they know how to
But
do
what
that.
happens
That's
if Star
exactly
Trek
why
doesn't hit
Star
it?
Trek is going to the streaming service,
Hold
because
on.
it's not. They know it's not going to perform as well as everything else that is on their network. So they're
Exactly.
putting it and they're setting it up on a platform that they know it's going to work.
Right.
Yes.
But Ross, sorry, Will, what were you gonna say?
No, I'm sorry. For me, it's like, okay, they're trying to get this streaming service going, but they're expecting people to sign up. We've got fans here that will. I know people that won't. I'm
Yeah,
just
but you're
wondering
talking about
where this
fans.
revenue is going to come from.
But
I
that's
don't think it will
fans.
meet CBS's mean.
This is the same mentality that Axanar uses, that fan films, that some of them who are living in bubbles use, where Axanar thinks that you get enough of these Axanar fans up in arms, they're going to boycott Star Trek Beyond, and it's going to cost them. But the segment of the fandom is so small, is so tiny that
Right, but you're asking people who don't know anything about Star Trek or know the
Yes.
Abrams Star Trek to bring them in.
Yes.
Is that going to pull them in? Just
Yes,
for
because
Star
you know
Trek?
what's going to pull them in. You're going to do a marketing campaign, and CBS is going to show the first episode on CBS as a like a movie, as a pilot movie, as a special event show on CBS, which is going to be your way of pulling in everybody's like, oh, so that pilot episode, or for the lack of a better word, that first episode
counter it,
is going to be
Narc
so kick-ass that people are going to be like, well, shit, I got to go and get CBS All Access so I can watch more.
Okay, to back up a minute, how do you know it'll be that good?
I'm saying it has to be if they want it to
It
work.
has to be, but look at the first episodes of Enterprise, Voyager, Next Generation.
Well, it was a very long time ago.
Okay,
Yeah,
no,
but
okay.
Voyager-
Look at the first episode of any season that
Yeah,
starts.
right.
They're
Well,
not
except for
very
Lost.
good.
No, but actually, but what's happened though is that By the way, Voyager actually had a really good pilot
Voyager had a
episode.
really strong opening.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
did.
they did.
I
They had a
agree with
really
that.
good
It did.
episode.
And then they
Let's
faltered
not
right
beat
away.
around that bush. That
Yeah,
was
then they
really
stopped.
Yeah,
Yep.
strong.
Battlestar Galactica had an excellent first opening.
Battlestar Galactica did a miniseries event, which was a backdoor pilot, which was absolutely stunning, and you wanted to watch more. I mean, there are ways of doing. Lost had a great pilot episode that did so well. It went way above ABC's expectations. They actually had fired their studio boss for greenlighting this show. And and then it became a huge success. I mean, you can do a very strong pilot episode. Yes, there are a lot of really bad pilot episodes. There are a lot of really bad first episodes, but those are pilot episodes. This is not going to be a pilot. Remember, this is not one episode they're just making in the ether and that's it. Then they have to make more after this. This is like House of Cards. This is like all these other shows, which they already have the season planned. They already even have it filmed. And so your first episode is a first episode. It's not a pilot episode.
So what do you think? What do you think the numbers are going to have to be? I mean, Netflix had what, 10, 20, 30 million people?
But that
Maybe
doesn't
in the
matter.
United States.
That doesn't matter.
But they have to have something to make sure that they're going to get turnover.
It's the same, but it's the same model as HBO's. It doesn't, HBO, they don't give a crap about like how many people are viewing. What they care about is how many subscriptions did it create, how many subscriptions did it retain, and is it worth us spending the money and continuing this? Like HBO continues some shows like Veep. Isn't exactly Veep, especially in its first 2 seasons, was not exactly a show that had people saying, "Oh my God, let me get HBO." But what happened was that it created buzz, it created attention, it started winning Emmys, especially for Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and then for the show itself. And those create buzz, which is like, wow, what is this show that everybody's talking about? I'm going to go watch it. Game of Thrones had terrible viewership numbers in its first season. Nobody watched. I mean, people watched it, and it had the first good episode, but then after that, it kind of fell off quite a bit.
That is a good point. That is a very good point.
And it's people who are now getting HBO because their friends are talking about Game of Thrones.
Yep.
And that's exactly what people get Netflix. Because
and people do
talk
those
about
reaction
House of Cards
shows.
And Orange
You know what I mean?
Black.
Those reaction shows.
Yeah.
And
you got a good
Netflix
point.
looks at it the same way. They don't publish their ratings because they don't care about ratings. They care about subscriptions.
Right? Yep,
and hopefully that's what CBS is going to do with All Access.
Well, if CBS is smart, what they'll do is they'll send their ship out in space. It gets invaded by zombies, half the crew dies, and then they got to figure out what to do next. that'll get me to watch the next episode.
Yeah, and then the captain gets killed in like the 4th episode. But,
something like that.
That would only work if it's zombie Vulcans, right?
Yeah, zombie Vulcans.
Yeah,
no Nosferatu.
I want to see zombie Klingons.
Zombie Klingons, and they're killing after crew.
But that's what it. But remember too is that, and one nice thing about being in a subscription-based service is that buzz will make a difference. Even if you don't have the viewership numbers, if there's still a lot of buzz around Star Trek, this new Star Trek series, let's say it's controversial. That's a good thing. Because if you get buzz, then guess what? That means people are talking about CBS All Access. And guess what? When people start seeing that that's available, like, oh, maybe I should get that, they'll spend the $6 to get it. That is what CBS All Access wants. That's what HBO wants. That's what Netflix wants. And, so it's not about, like, where does it have to be at? What you need to really judge it is how much buzz is it getting? Is it enough buzz to where CBS can say, you know what, let's pick it up for another season. Let's see if that buzz will grow into even more subscriptions next year. That's what you're looking at.
You know what?
How many people are watching it?
Look at The Sopranos. Guys, hold on.
If that happens, that's great. But at this point, I'm still not interested.
But okay, hold on, son. Hold on. Look back at The Sopranos. HBO, when they first were really doing this kind of stuff, I want to go back in time to a little bit to The Sopranos. That show was at the time taking a chance and trying something new. Okay. And it was the early 2000s. It was the late 90s, whatever. But they, when they hit the nail on the head, it became like the thing. You know what I'm saying? I have a funny feeling that what Michael's trying to say is this new Star Trek could kind of be like The Sopranos for sci-fi.
I don't think so.
I've never watched The Sopranos, so I probably wouldn't watch
I
Sopranos.
I've not watched Sopranos. I haven't watched the Game of Thrones. I don't
watch
HBO.
Game of Thrones.
So
but
I don't get any of that.
But the thing is, what other people do. But
the fact that I got you all to talk over each other is good enough.
Just because you guys don't doesn't mean that there's a very large portion of the population that will.
But I don't watch The Walking Dead, but a lot of people watch it.
But I've seen articles where HBO even though this is the peak time of TV, apparently, isn't doing very well, according to the others like CBS, NBC, even Fox. I mean, they're not doing very well because they're not getting the subscriptions anymore.
You got to get the attention.
But wait. I don't know what you're referring to. Like, what exactly numbers you're looking at? Because remember too that a lot of people have been cutting their cable, and so I don't know if they're including subscriptions. Their OTT subscriptions, like to HBO Now. Like, for instance, I don't have cable, but I have OTT. I mean, I have their OTT service, which is HBO Now. That's a big difference. And those are subscribers. I pay $15 a month for that.
Well, either way, I can't wait to see what happens. When the new show comes out, what the numbers look like. If it's a good series, if there's hype, I would love to see that.
And I'll tell you guys who aren't going to see it all about it.
Ooh.
Good luck being unfriended.
Okay. Anyway, I have to get going.
So, I knew you were going to say that.
Yep. So it was good talking to you guys. And
John, thank you very much for your participation.
Yes. Okay, and I'll probably listen to the rest of it after it gets posted.
All right, take care,
Which
John.
will be tonight, John. And we'll talk to you later, buddy.
Okay, talk to you later. Bye.
Bye, Z's.
Yeah, so guys, listen. So here's the deal. I am absolutely fascinated by this conversation, and I'll tell you why. Because pretty much everything that Michael you've talked about, everything we have coming out with Star Trek. See, we could spend a whole show about this. Star Trek.
We are spending a whole show on this.
I was going to say, are we doing that already?
Yeah, we pretty much are. See, the thing is, like, there's so much to discuss, but yet we don't know what they're going to do, right?
Right now, everything we can do is speculation.
Speculation, right. Because although Michael has some great citational sources, I guess that's one way to look at it.
And industry know-how.
Exactly. But the thing is that no matter who he has in his bank of... whether Rod Roddenberry himself says, hey, John, I heard this is what they're going to do. They're going to make George the captain of the new show.
But that's just hearsay, George.
Roddenberry's also an EP, so it wouldn't be I heard. He would have been part of the decision making.
And I can tell you, and some people have been giving me too much credit, like too much, not really credit, but too much like weight in terms of the rumors that we're reporting. And that's why I keep trying to remind people that what we're reporting is unconfirmed rumors.
Right.
That might not be true. And just because I have a past business association with Rod Roddenberry does not mean that Rod's calling me up and whispering in my ear.
I can absolutely guarantee you,
he's
got to
not
listen to
doing
this
that.
episode because I'm going to give you some shit.
They are not doing that. They're not violating NDAs. They're not doing any of that stuff. I can tell you that, that's one. Those are conversations that I can guarantee you that I would never have with Trevor or with Rod.
So, Michael, when do you think that the publicity is going to start ramping up for this new series?
I think that I mean you started seeing it now. I mean with that trailer, but I think what's going to happen is they're going to do a slow rollout of the cast, which is what they did with Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and Voyager.
Right.
You cast the captain, you cast some of the other parts, and with all these Star Trek sites that are out there now, you can kind of milk the fan base. But I think you're going to start seeing a lot of promotional stuff on CBS. I think you're going to start seeing, like especially in the fall when the new shows start up. You're going to see some promotional stuff, in promo slots that they'll use in their network shows. I think you're going to see where, even in their commercials on CBS All Access, I think you're going to see even, pre-shows at movies and such. You might see a lot of that. I think that there's a lot of avenues that they have. I think that you won't see like an actual full trailer for this probably until October or November.
That makes sense. October.
Once everything from Beyond is died down.
At least, at least when you have something filmed. I mean, people keep saying, like, oh, they're filming July 1st. They're not filming July 1st. They move in July 1st. And they got to build.
Move in? Oh, wow.
Yeah, they have to move into their studios. They don't even take possession, I think, until June 1st or July 1st. I can't remember what the date was. But everybody said, oh, that's when filming starts. It's like, no, that's when they take possession of the space in Toronto, and which is an empty space. It's not like they get in there and somebody pre-built all their sets for them,
So we got a little while to wait, so
yes.
A lot more speculation to come.
Yes, lots of speculation.
So, Michael, let me ask you a question. We're going to get going in a little bit, but because I mean, this show's been going great. I love this episode. I love talking to you, and I hope that in the future, you. By the way, I'm not like cutting it off right now, but I'm just asking you. So I heard a rumor that you are picky about who you podcast with.
Yeah, I'm just I don't do I get a lot of requests, and I've had for years, just for various things, for different podcasts, because there's so many podcasts out there, especially when I was doing my own.
You get a lot of requests.
Yeah, and it's because I don't know why people, and I think some of it dates back to when I used to do conventions, back before Twitter and everything. I would share like a bunch of stuff that I would never ever share publicly, because really there's no way that it could get out. But nowadays people can videotape you, they can tweet it at the moment you say it. So, so I don't share all the interesting stuff that I hear anymore that's not for public consumption. But, but also because, I mean, I've been in entertainment journalism now for 18 years. I mean, Sci-Fi Portal started in 1998. And even though Airlock Alpha, which is the successor site to that, we're not really focused that much on it because I don't watch enough right now to kind of maintain it. I don't watch enough television to do it now.
Right.
But I've been focusing on Star Trek because Star Trek's always been my thing. And, but I've had contacts with people over the years, and, and they're long-standing relationships, and, and it's just that, and people want me to come on because I am very opinionated, and, I don't mind being snarky, and I try to be funny. And so, and the thing is, I just don't have the time to do it. My thing is that the reason why I backed off from Airlock Alpha, and the reason why I kind of backed off from 1701 News until January, when I kind of came back full time on it, is that, I'm working on screenplays, and I'm working on a novel, which I procrastinate enough on, and, and this really takes away from it. So it's tough for me to do, like, if I even did a third of the podcast or interviews and stuff that I was invited to do, I wouldn't have time for anything else. And so I'm very picky. Let's put it that way. I'm very picky about the shows that I'll come on. Like, I would definitely, if G&T, which is Terry's and Mike's and Nick's show, if they invited me on, I would be there in a heartbeat because, I love those guys. They're good people.
Or Super Geeks.
You asked. Yeah,
well, we definitely appreciate you spending time with us.
Yeah, you guys.
The only reason we asked you,
and
we respect your
and I was
opinion.
like, yeah, I'll definitely do it.
Yeah, I totally appreciate you coming on, big time. I want to say this.
Fun discussion.
Yeah. If you want to come on in the future for some, even if it's not about this, dude, if you want to come on, just hang out with us, you would be most welcome.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's tough for me to do it, like, especially when I get back to when I get back to Grenada in a month. My internet's not always the strongest, so it's not always the fastest like it is here in Florida. But but yeah, it's just I'm definitely open to doing it. I might not be able to stay on the whole time, but I can definitely try to make time and try to do that, because if the conversation's interesting, usually I'm there.
Look, here's my point. I think you're a cool guy. I met you. We talked to each other on Facebook. I asked you if you wanted to come on tonight. I said, this is what's going on. You came on, and my God, dude, you have more than met the expectation that I thought. I mean, I was just privileged to just have you on for an hour, let alone an hour and a half. You know what I'm saying? So thank you very much for even being here. You know what I'm saying?
And that's the thing is, like, it's like where my friends would always want to go with me to the movies, and it's like, but why? I don't say anything during the movies unless it sucks, and then I'm making fun of it the whole time. Then that's entertaining. But I usually don't go see sucky movies because I don't spend money.
Yeah,
Mystery Science Theater.
Yeah. I'll Mystery Science Theater it, for sure. But but I've only done it like twice because because going to the movies is expensive, and I'm not going to spend money on crappy movies. And so it's like, why do you want to go? And so I would have to see movies. Like, I'll have to see Star Trek, I'm sure. Luckily, I'll be in Grenada, so I won't have to see it multiple times. But, like, Into Darkness, I saw 7 times in the theater.
Dude,
primarily because people wanted to go see it with me. And I'm like, why? Just so you could sit next to me? It's like the only person I ever wanted to sit in a theater with was Patrick Stewart, and I got to do that for, like, 25 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
cool.
He was at the Sarasota Film Festival a bunch of years ago when he did the Lion and Winter remake. And so he was in the theater he sat right in front of me for like 25 minutes. And of course, then he got up and left. But, so I got to look at his bald head. Like, I wasn't even paying attention to the movie. I was just looking at the back of his head for 25 minutes.
I will say this, though, Michael. Now, obviously, this is the first time you ever come on our show. We're not like the most well-known podcast out there, but we're trying.
Wait, you told me you guys were the biggest.
He lied.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We are. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
We have over 9 million views on
yeah, you told me it
social
was
media.
9 million.
9 million. Guys,
YouTube
back
partner
up.
and all that.
Yeah. Shh, guys, tell them.
You told me this was on Netflix.
I think
Oh,
you need
yeah,
to.
yeah,
I,
it
think,
was on
I think
Netflix
this is one of
and,
the times where you need to just go quiet,
Ashton
George.
Kutcher, he said, "Hey, pimped us."
Okay.
So no, I'm just kidding. But no, seriously, I appreciate you coming on, man, because I really enjoy your articles, and we have a mutual association through GNT. Ross, you know who this guy is, and I just took a chance. I said, I'm going to ask Michael tonight. Hey, dude, can you come on and just talk with us about this one subject? And not only did you come on, but you went above and beyond. So thank you very much for being such a gracious guest.
Yeah, well, you were, I read some of what you say, online and stuff, and talking to you, and so, and I felt that you were interesting and entertaining, and you said some nice
Well, thank
things.
you.
So it's like, well, at least he's not going to but even if you were going to confront me on stuff, I'm all for it. Go for it. I love good conflict. So
Obviously, that wasn't
that's
the
why
case.
if you want to bring Alec Peters onto this show with me on it, I would kill for it. But he won't do it because he's
if
afraid.
we can get that guy,
He is afraid.
I'm not
to
sure
talk
I'd
to
like
me.
to share the room with him just out of principle.
yeah.
I mean, even
Hey,
Robert
if we
Meyer
can do it,
Burnett, the
though,
director, is
if we
too
can
scared.
get that arranged, hey, I'll be all for it.
Oh, I would do it. You don't even have to ask me twice. I mean, I keep trying to get him to talk to me on Facebook.
The only way we would ever be able to get Alec Peters is if there was a Pike-like incident and he was stuck in a box.
Yeah.
I love it when geeks like us try to act gangster.
Maybe if we just insult him often enough, we'll get his attention and then be able to get him on.
Well,
Michael,
the thing
can
is,
I ask
I'm
you
not
this?
afraid. I'm not afraid to face him because, he could sit there and throw insults and everything else. But the thing is that I go by facts. I got a ton of them, and when I'm wrong, I admit I'm wrong. If I get something that I think is inappropriate, and if I do it, I'll say, hey, you know what? I shouldn't have done that. It was wrong. It was inappropriate, or this isn't true. And so, I thought it was true, but now it's not. But I'm willing to admit that, and I work with facts. So guess what? I'll face anybody. I don't care who they are. Put Donald Trump on here. I'll debate him.
Let's get Donald Trump on here.
Another guy I don't want to share the room with.
Yeah, I know. Alex,
Am I going to have to take a break from the show?
I actually called him Alex. Yes. Makes me feel bad. Michael.
Yeah.
Did we lose you, George?
Yeah. Wow, that was like a.
I just heard
Pause.
Michael.
And then
I'm like, wow, dun dun
Yeah,
dun.
he wanted to ask a question, and then he just dramatic paused out.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. So, Michael,
Pull it, John.
in the future, for whatever reason, if I say, hey, dude, will you come back to the show for some other subject, just your opinion, will you come back?
Yeah, I mean, and just remember, I don't watch as much television as I used to, so I'm not really up on all the shows as well.
All right,
but...
well, I'll make sure that you have an up-to-date on whatever we're going to talk about.
And just give you some
He'll
notice,
get you the link.
Because sometimes it's hard for me to do it. I mean, Vic Mignogna, from Star Trek Continues has been really mad at me.
Yeah, Vic's cool.
Because Vic has tried to call me now, I think a dozen times, and he'll be pissed if he finds out that I went on this show for 2 hours and I have not yet returned his call.
Yeah, you might want to give him a call back.
Yeah,
I doubt he's a
Vic.
listener, so I think you're good.
I'm sure
Yes.
he might be just to be mad. But no, Vic is so wonderful, by the way. If you
is.
I have never met Mick. I've never met Vic before this whole Axanar thing. This is another. See, Axanar has done so many great things, where I've got to talk to people and meet people, and get a chance to reconnect with people that I haven't ever or in a long time. And Vic is one of those people, because I know some people have negative opinions about Vic, but he's awesome. He is so passionate. He is loves what he does. He's so honest. He's so upright. I love Vic, and I think he's wonderful.
I have talked to Vic myself, not in person, but through friends. And I'll tell you something else. We've had James Kerwin on another podcast.
James is great too.
Sunsail knows him.
Yeah, James is wonderful.
Yeah, everybody's cool. We're all friends, or at least we could be, if Sunsail allows it, because she's in charge.
And if you say sober,
I'm sober.
stay that way.
And we keep you quiet enough.
But but a lot of the film people are great. I think this one guy, I can't remember his name, Nick something. He's been angry at me because I've been, because it's just responding to something he's saying on Facebook, and but I'm not targeting him because I don't know who he is. And
Are you talking about James Kerwin?
no, James I know.
Is he
I've
on
met
the
James many
GNT
times.
show?
Oh,
It's
you're talking about Nick.
Yeah, Nick, somebody. He does one of the other fan films, and he thinks I'm targeting him, but I'm not. I mean, my thing is that fan films need to get together and need to say to CBS and Paramount that we understand that what Axanar did crossed every line. We know what these lines are, so please do not write restrictive guidelines that would essentially kill us. And that's what I've been saying that for 2 months.
Formal
Now some of them
boycott.
are saying it, and not even and it's
Well,
just
I mean,
to
that's something
differentiate
Terry Lynn has
themselves.
been wanting from the beginning of this
Oh yeah,
whole
Terry's
Axanar
wanted it. I
thing.
think even
That's
before
true.
anybody
And
wanted it.
And it's like it took exposing this crap with Axanar pulling everybody into a room and said, "Here's my guidelines." That it took that going public, because I'm sorry, Mr. Peters and whoever else thinks that was a private conversation. That was a public conversation because it was more than 2 people.
Yes, that's what. Yeah, it's two. If you have more than two people in there,
the moment
there's no
all of this
expectation
stuff
of
got
privacy.
released public, everybody flocked to the whole. We have to make a statement.
I'm going to have this episode up within the next hour or two, just to let you guys know.
But it's not just the films that went on to that. George's production, Starfinder, is on there. My productions, Gates of Stovacore and Blood of the Near, are also on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and the thing is that and so if Nick is listening, I hope, because he seems to be like, every time I even mention this, it seems like he gets all upset, and I really don't understand why, because like I said, I don't know him, I'm not targeting him, I just responded to what he said. Even if Vic said it, I would be saying the same thing, whatever he was responding to. And so, but my thing is that fan films need to stand up to this. You can't just sit back and say, hey, we're going to play Switzerland and then we'll be safe. No, you won't be. Not if the nuclear bomb hits right next door and you're still in the wake. You're going to get burned by this, and it's not even your fault. You did nothing wrong, but you can't just sit back and do nothing. You have to speak up.
At this point, the only people who can afford to sit back and do nothing and wait for this case to do anything are the third parties who made money off the back of the Star Trek franchise, and that's Indiegogo and GoFundMe.
Oh yeah, they don't. Yeah,
or Kickstarter.
Yeah.
But even CBS and Paramount could sit back. They're in no big hurry for this.
I hear you.
They got money they can fight this. This is not. They have more money. And the biggest thing about lawsuits, and this is a sad truth about lawsuits, but the biggest thing about lawsuits is make sure that the other side runs out of money before you do.
All right, you guys. I absolutely loved this episode. I want to thank you very much, Michael Hinman, for joining us today. I want to thank everybody who participated. Son, thank you for joining us. This was a very interesting episode. I can't wait to hear it back. There you go, Anthony. There you go. Because I'm going to have this episode up in the next couple of hours, as far as how long before it's posted. But thank you, seriously, Michael. Thank you. I hope you will join us again.
Yeah, just invite me back. Give me some notice. I'll be back.
I will. I will do that. And son, I hope you join us when that time comes.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right, you guys.
It terrifies me, the legal ramifications of this case, because there are 2 or 3 other quote unquote fair use cases, and
I know
as much as people want to say that this is a cut and dry IP case. Yes,
there's more to it.
No, because the argument from Alec Peters is fair use. So it could have those ramifications.
Exactly. And so I want to thank everybody for joining us. We almost ran the whole 2 hours, and I think that's interesting because I had a feeling that we would, because there's a lot of interesting subject matter. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. John had to leave a little early, but
I have a final.
Go ahead, Will. Sorry, Anthony.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Here's my final thought.
Name tags.
I know, right? We do. Yeah, like I look like Will, but Captain Kirk can beat Batman.
That's no good.
I'm Batman.
Kirk can kiss my ass.
Uhura can beat Batman.
It's a little joke for everybody who doesn't know. Uhura could probably do that. Okay, you guys. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. This was episode 16, which is wow. So thank you for joining us, and we will talk to you next time.